Throughout our journey across Teyvat, we have been accompanied by our little flying companion and guide, Paimon. Despite exploring much of the world together, next to nothing is known about her. The one time Paimon's past is briefly touched on, is during Risley's story quest, an opportunity for rebirth.
Alright, Paimon's gonna have a look. Paimon wants this one. This dark, sparkly gem. You just know it must be worth a ton of Mora. Actually, never mind. Paimon doesn't want this gem anymore. Can Paimon pick something else instead? Paimon couldn't even tune them out. It's as if the gem was just drawing them out of Paimon's brain. It was super spooky.
Where Paimon gets unsettling flashbacks, but to what that might have been, isn't explored any further. The only other potential clue is also found in Fontaine, when we speak to a Melusine known as Canatilla. She, like other Melusines, are able to see things others cannot. Canatilla describes this as a monster, able to eat the entire world. While Paimon is a rainbow balloon, with its string coming from above. But that was all I could gather, for any direct mentions alluding to Paimon's background. There may be other clues in cutscenes, but I will focus on more grounded evidence first. I will go over speculation later in this video. So what's next is Paimon's design, which may hold the strongest hints to her identity. As a character's design is a visual representation of their personality, interest and background. This is even more so for Paimon, as her design has always been the center of discussion for her identity. These details will likely begin to make sense as the story continues. But until then we can only theorize the meaning behind each aspect of her design. So let's begin with the surface-level observations before speculation. Starting from her head, is her crown or tiara, that has a unique and unfamiliar emblem. Next is her eyes, which seem to resemble a night and starry sky. Moving on is her scarf, that has a pattern of 3, both around her neck and her back, splitting into 3, while each having its own constellations. Next is the triquetra. Not much could be said, that hasn't been said already. It is likely a reference to the 3 moon sisters. But most importantly is that it's inverted. The 3 shapes beneath it are the opposite of the mural, pointing inward and opposed to outward. This next part, I struggled to find any type of resemblance to, in-game, or any real-world counterparts. The strange character on her hips. I have an idea of what it might be, but again that's speculation, which I'll save for later. What's more is the identical details that relate to Celestia. With that said, it is fair to say Paimon is more than likely related to Celestia. But to how, or who she was, is anyone's guess. Going off the assumption that Paimon wasn't always Paimon, who could she have been before we met her? There aren't too many suspects. But to name a few. Istaroth, the mother of Mondstadt's Anemo Archon, Barbados. She is also known as the Thousand Winds of Time. The next suspect is one of the oldest theories for Paimon's true identity, the unknown god. And then there is a being that isn't as well known, or discussed, the ancient Seelie ancestor, the Pale Princess. But to who I will be putting a spotlight on comes from one little passage in the book Before Sun and Moon, which states, the primordial one may have been Phanes. It had wings and a crown, and was birthed from an egg, androgynous in nature. But for the world to be created, the egg's shell had to be broken. However, Phanes, the primordial one, used the eggshell to separate the universe and the microcosm of the world. Could Paimon be Phanes? She is the only being we have come across to wear a crown. Could be androgynous in nature, and has literal ties to Celestia due to what the Melusine told us. Is this enough for Paimon to be Phanes, and if so what does that even mean? Before Sun and Moon, is the history of the world from a scribe of Istaroth. All that we learn is likely Istaroth's knowledge of the world. With that, she poses a question. The primordial one may have been Phanes. So is Phanes the primordial one or not? I want to argue that Phanes is not the primordial one but instead the true first shade. One born from an egg, born of Teyvat. Not a descender. Androgynous in nature. made in the image of what the Primordial One believes a god should be. Under the influence of the first descender, or a puppet for its will. Phanes with the power of the first descender creates 4 shining shades and enacts the will of its creator, taking over the world of Teyvat. With what I've discovered, I do believe Paimon could be Phanes. One thing of note is her crown may be inspired by the androgynous symbol. The similarities are not identical, but I figured it's worth a mention. It has also been shown that Paimon is affected by the Irminsul, making her a part of its world, unlike a descender.
It's the Balladeer's fault for causing Paimon all this mental stress. But erasing yourself from history? It's unthinkable. Is that really possible in Irminsul? There's no way he'll actually succeed, right? Otherwise, won't everyone who's connected to him be affected too? What was Paimon supposed to be doing just now? The Balladeer? Is that a food too? Huh. Weird name though. So, the Balladeer. Is that someone's name? 'Cause it sounds like a nickname or something.
The Balladeer? It sounds like some kind of code name.
And once more is the mystery of why Paimon was in the sea and rescued by us. Was this by chance or by design? Is Paimon acting on behalf of the Primordial One? Whether that be intentional or not. But what has Paimon done that could have worked against us? There is a theory that Paimon leading us to the Statue of the Seven was the first step in our downfall. But I don't think that Paimon is in any way our enemy. Instead, I think the story behind her ending up in the sea may be related to Paimon's relationship with Celestia. Likely along the same lines of the question posed by Isteroth and her disappearance. Is the Primordial One Phanes, or another higher being? And what if Phanes was unaware of this? How would they react to this discovery? But why would the Primordial One use an avatar to begin with? Unless there was some wrongful or unsightly nature about the Primordial One. Which seems to be the case, the more we learn about Celestia's response to the ancient civilizations of Teyvat. Bordering between benevolent and malevolent. Sharing a connection to the god of Gnosticism, the Demiurge. A malformed and flawed god. The Demiurge, also known as Yaldabaoth, has many similarities to Phanes. But the Demiurge is first and foremost depicted as a serpent with a lion's head. What if the Demiurge's true identity is similar to the Primordial One, not Phanes? With the emblem on Paimon's crown representing them. A serpent-like dragon. I'll go a step further, and call the Primordial One a sort of abomination, or mutant. Sharing a resemblance to a parasite. Like a living image of the Tree of Life. Seen in Fullmetal Alchemist or maybe even in Genshin's manga. Which also depicts Celestia in an ominous light. So what if Phanes for some reason turned against the Primordial One? Leading to them having their memory tampered with. Cast out of Celestia, down to Teyvat. Then later ending up in Mondstadt's sea, only to be rescued by the Traveler. But why Mondstadt of all places? Especially on the coast of the Nameless Island. Could Phanes, the creator of the 4 shining shades, seek them out based on nothing more than muscle memory? If so, why start with the 1,000 Winds of Time, Isteroth? Did the two have the closest bond out of all the other shades? If we are assuming Phanes had their memory tampered with, leading to them becoming Paimon, then it should mean the two had a strong connection. And seeing how Isteroth questioned the identity of the Primordial One, she would likely be of aid to Paimon. But without her memory of being Phanes, it is unlikely Paimon would do this intentionally. Making muscle memory the only viable reason for Paimon being in Mondstadt. Specifically the coast leading of the Nameless Island. Despite all that I've said about Paimon being Phanes, I want to circle back to Isteroth, with Paimon's design in mind. Well, specifically the scarf, the triquetra, and that strange character on her hip. The scarf's use of 3 may also signify the sisters, like the triquetra. As the inverted triquetra with the 3 symbols pointing inward might mean 2 things. The sisters will reunite, or the flow of time. because the sisters being the moon, also track the flow of time. To be inverted, could mean all aspects of time, or the control over it, past, present, and future. Once more is her symbol, which I believe to be a note, as all three sisters, aria, sonnet, and canon are related to music, while also being indirectly connected to the early histories of Mondstadt. This is seen in the aiding of Andreas with the power of a god, used to do battle against the Storm King, only for Isteroth to do that very same thing, with Venti, and later on ruling alongside him. Isteroth could have a strong connection to the Moon Sisters. So if this is the case, Paimon's design as a shade, could mean each shade has their own unique design, related to their specific role and powers. The character on her hip could be her own musical note and her crown is instead a tiara and shared across all four shades, to show their connection to the primordial one. But most importantly is the triquetra, which would be specifically tied to her and would not be seen on any other being of Celestia. This could be the reason why the unknown god has no direct symbol that is related to the Moon Sisters with a triquetra. I'll end this off with the discussion of her gameplay feature, which is also a hot topic for debate, be it unrelated to the lore of the game or not. To investigate this further, I played Honkai Star Rail, just to see if there could be some similarities. 2 things. This pause only halts interactions from enemies, but people and things move freely. The pause feature is our character's phone, which is Hoyo's way of incorporating the pause to fit the style of the game. So why shouldn't that apply to Genshin? Now Paimon is not only capable of moving during pause, she might even be breaking the fourth wall, but everything stops. Well, almost everything. Isteroth, the 1,000 winds of time. Seeds of stories, brought by the wind and cultivated by time. There was this very old theory, that the grass moves during the pause menu, having something to do with the Dendro Archon. But I believe the grass moves because of a gentle wind in response to Paimon's ability to pause time. Time and wind. Another thing, in regards to Paimon's symbol on her hip. This was a recent discovery of mine. Maybe it's just me, but could Paimon's symbol been influenced, or inspired by these characters? That symbol is YHWH, Yahweh, who is also theorized to be the false god, the demiurge in Gnosticism. If so, does that mean Paimon is Phanes, or is this a design shared across all shades? Let me know what you think. This next part is a bonus, but probably still worth mentioning. It isn't strictly related to Paimon but involves her. Paimon is likely the Omni element. There isn't much solid proof to back this up, but I wish I paid more attention to the card game, because Paimon is directly tied to the Omni element. Also in normal combat the Omni particles become available despite no one using it, which provides energy to all the elements. What if this is only possible due to Paimon? That's a big jump, I'll admit, but I have a habit of leaving risky things out only for it to later fit. Anyway, moving on. The Omni element, I believe, is what the Sovereigns mistook for abyssal powers, likely only ever having knowledge of the 7 elements. When the first Descender came, the element they used might not have been the Abyss but the Omni element. But because the dragons were unfamiliar with this, Nibeling believed it to be of the Abyss, leading to the desire for forbidden knowledge to combat the invader, causing him to use powers not suited for the world of Teyvat. I also believe the Omni element to be higher than the Abyss, but I do not think that element is light. Light is probably its own thing, and Omni is just all the elements combined, created by the primordial one as an imitation of light. I'm saving this for another video in regards of the twins and the end of Teyvat chapters, but what if the powers used in the very beginning was the true light element? Our Abyss twin, despite seeming to have that same effect on their armor, has never used that power again? Maybe it's because that power isn't as useful, or maybe it's because that power cannot be obtained again in this realm, as the twins may have came from the light realm. But that's another video. To sum up my reasoning behind that, it's Gnosticism. The false god tries to imitate real gods. It's a lot to unravel and might not even be the case. Genshin might be influenced by these things but deviate. So giving a history lesson, I think, is pointless. The only thing that matters is the core details and ideology. Genshin isn't going to mirror its influences one-to-one. It will deviate. Moving on. Omni is likely part of the Primordial One's powers. A power that could not be matched by the Sovereigns, leading to the desire for forbidden knowledge, the Abyss. Despite the efforts of the dragons, their authority was stolen and the Primordial One became the ruling god of Teyvat. If Paimon is the Omni element, then it is likely either all the shades are, or Phanes alone is. But I imagine Paimon to be Isteroth somehow. But the possibility of her being Phanes is probably more likely if I'm being honest. Phanes being the true first shade, an avatar of the Primordial One, the first descender. Also is Paimon's memories. If Paimon is Phanes born of Teyvat, she should be affected by the Irminsul. But after her speaking on her memories, this could mean Paimon was playing dumb this whole time.
Paimon remembered a lot of bad things when she picked it up. Paimon couldn't even tune them out. It's as if the gem was just drawing them out of Paimon's brain. It was super spooky.
The point is Paimon after the black gem knows more than she's letting on. But that's pure speculation based on what little we know. I'll end on that. Let me know what you think. Who might Paimon be? Or is Paimon just Paimon? Should she be trusted?